Today, Mitch McConnell acknowledged that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have won. Newsmax, the Trump-supporting right-wing network, also acknowledged that due to the votes cast in the Electoral College, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would now be president and vice president-elect. And the question I've brought up over and over again is, how does the right respond to something like this if they don't view Joe Biden as legitimate? Well, Mitch McConnell coming out making the statement is probably a good thing. A lot of Republicans will probably just say, sure, fine, whatever. Newsmax saying the same thing. You'll probably get a lot of Trump supporters saying, okay, well, I guess fine, whatever. Over on Reddit at r/conservative, many of these conservatives are saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to wake up, go to work, and carry on with my life. And so be it. The same thing keeps churning. And it's probably why conservatives tend to lose. The left goes around smashing things up and seizing territory, while the right goes, oh, gee, gosh darn it, I guess I'll go to bed and wake up and go to work and just live under a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration. But something interesting is happening now. Trump supporters are different, I guess. I'm not sure Newsmax coming out and saying Joe Biden won is going to change anyone's minds, although many people are now mocking Newsmax or mocking Trump supporters, claiming that Newsmax's compromise is a joke. We're seeing something rather interesting, actually. The town that doesn't believe in COVID, off-the-rails mayor of tiny Washington community, keeps open its 30 businesses as locals pack bars, refuse masks, and claim lockdown is utter nonsense. A town with a population of 759 in the 2010 census says it's unfair to restrict its 30 businesses, claiming the state will not give him data on local infections. We saw something similar over in Belmar, New Jersey. Atlas Gym, since the beginning of the lockdowns, has been resisting. Now, this is what I'm effectively calling an autonomous zone. And I'm doing that to kind of make a point. When you have Joe Biden as president and Stuart Rhodes, I believe he's the founder of the Oath Keepers, the largest militia in this country, right-wing militia, saying the people who voted for Trump, they're not going to recognize Joe Biden as a legitimate president, and they're going to regard anything coming out of his mouth as illegitimate. Then how long until right-wing individuals start saying our town is not subject to your laws? The left has been doing this forever. From the DEA, from drug enforcement laws to immigration laws, we've only started seeing this sort of. I don't want to pretend like I know everything about history, but for the most part in my lifetime, the idea of sanctuary jurisdictions is relatively new. It started with Virginia. Maybe there were some other issues. But when they started banning guns, or tried to, a bunch of sheriffs and a bunch of counties were like, nope, this is a 2A sanctuary, and we're not going to be enforcing that law. Here's my prediction. What they're doing in the media and what they're saying in Congress is not going to change the minds of the diehard Trump base. Regular Americans, normies, left or right, are probably just going to be like, I don't want to fight. Just give me pizza and beer and, I'll carry on with my life. But on the far left, they've already been declaring autonomous zones. In Portland right now, they've surrounded, 3 or 4 block radius, and they've taken over this area, pushed cops out. They set up booby traps, and they're armed. It's very, very different from what we're seeing with this small town where they're saying, we're not doing the lockdown. Sorry. But there's a reason why I think these individuals aren't getting armed, sort of. They probably already are armed, but aren't like patrolling militias and declaring an autonomous zone. It's a rural town. It's small. There's way more people here and businesses than the autonomous zone in Portland, where the far left is. But the far left is trying to set up an autonomous zone for different reasons. And they're trying to do it in the heart of, mainstream liberal establishment in this city, in Portland. So naturally, there are substantial resources to shut them down and an interest in doing so. When it comes to this small town, why would the governor or anyone in the state actually care all that much? Now, maybe they need to make sure they crush this before this idea spreads and more towns start saying no to COVID restrictions. Or maybe they just don't care about what 759 people think. I'm sure it's maybe bigger or smaller now. It's a 10-year-old census. So it could be very, very different. But this is exactly what I think we're going to see more of. And I think it's going to expand. And with Joe Biden becoming president, presumably, as I've said, I think it's the odds of Trump pulling this off, it's astronomical. It's not going to happen. But it could. Lightning can strike 3 times. We'll see. Trump supporters are certainly hopeful. But even Mitch McConnell and Newsmax now saying it. I'll tell you what I think. People are going to look at the Joe Biden and say no. Fauci is going to be working with Biden. Dr. Osterholm is. Bill Gates. They're going to be saying more lockdown. They're already talking about lockdowns going into 2022. Maybe we'll get some normalcy in 7 or 8 months. And they think that conservatives who don't view Biden as legitimate are going to be like, okay, I don't know what to expect. I can tell you conservatives do tend to just roll over very easily. But something's different now because the Proud Boys are very different. They're not rolling over. They went around stomping Antifa in D.C. I criticized it. They were stealing Black Lives Matter banners and burning them. Don't steal other people's property and destroy it. But they're giving Antifa back what Antifa has been dishing out. And Antifa can't take it. They're crying about it. The Proud Boys show that among conservatives, or whatever you want to call it, the populist right, they're not just going to roll over and take it. But I think it'll be a lot like the far left. You know, Antifa gets some kind of tacit protection, support, and agreement from the mainstream left. But the mainstream left isn't typically engaging in Antifa-like activities with all black and, and clubs and stuff. But they do, well, they don't criticize it. They support it passively. I think we'll see the same thing with the Proud Boys. A ton of conservatives love the Proud Boys, but they don't go around like the Proud Boys. And so we're going to start seeing more, I guess, right-wing style autonomous zones. It'll look different just because, like I pointed out, it's rural versus urban. But this story right here about this town, there was an event organized by Patriot Prayer, which has some overlap or affiliation with the Proud Boys. They're not the same group. And that just goes to show the right-wing groups are going to start doing similar things to left-wing groups, albeit in different ways. But there you go. The important thing to know about this small town, it was going to be destroyed, completely crushed. You see, the COVID lockdown probably already is on track to destroy the small town because the town relies on tourism to survive. If everything's locked down, people are told they can't go out, and these businesses get closed, tourism season never happens, the money dries up, and if they can't run it's like a berry festival or something, then what's left? Nothing. A ghost town. So it's interesting. I don't know where people can be expected to move to, but when you see the lockdowns in these big cities, people flee. But what about towns like this? Let's read the story and see what's going on with this. Organized by Patriot Prayer, but then we got more breaking news too. The BBC is reporting a new COVID strain. And because of this, the UK is planning a tier 3, I guess that's like the most severe lockdown. New York has said they expect a possible total shutdown. And Fauci and Gates and all these experts are saying 2022, baby. You think people are going to last another year and a half or longer? Or do you think they're going to start setting up checkpoints in front of their town saying, no, get out. We are not going to just sit here and starve to death. Because that's what apparently they want to happen. Here's the news from the Daily Mail. They say hundreds of people have attended a freedom rally in a small town in Washington on Saturday after its mayor refused to enforce the state's COVID restrictions on businesses, citing the constitutional rights of small town America. Large crowds joined the Patriot Prayer organized rally in Mossy Rock, a rural community in Lewis County between Seattle and Portland, with maskless protesters waving flags and chanting against government oppression. Attendees, most from out of town, were encouraged to spend money in local restaurants, which were packed with people not wearing masks in defiance of state restrictions. It came after the town unexpectedly voted last month to ignore Washington Governor Jay Inslee's statewide business restrictions to stop the spread of the coronavirus. There you go. A legitimate and legal autonomous zone. Inslee's restrictions prohibit restaurants, bars, and gyms from offering indoor services and setting capacity restrictions on retail stores. The rules apply to all Washington counties until January 4th. Businesses that don't comply could be hit with fines totaling thousands of dollars. Let me tell you what's going on. Let me tell you a story, okay? You know, when I was younger, I remember talking to some of my friends. You know, I'm like a teenager, maybe like 14, 15. And I'd be like, hey, do you guys want to go skate? We're going to go skateboarding, at Vidham. That Vidham was the name of the park. And I'd hear a friend say like, no, I can't. I'm grounded. And I was like, what does that mean you're grounded? Like, what? I know what the definition is. And they're like, well, I can't go out. I'm like, why? My parents grounded me. And so I can't go out. What would happen if you did go out? I'd get grounded even longer. Okay. And then what would happen if you still then went out? Well, then I'd be grounded forever. I'm like, okay, do you not follow the logic? They can keep saying you're grounded, but if you can keep just going out, then saying you're grounded doesn't do anything. I guess they can take your stuff or lock your door or something weird, but they can't really do that. The point is, if all they can do is issue fines but you're going to be broke anyway and destitute. You might as well just say no, right? I'm not necessarily advocating for what they're doing. That's the point. Why would any of these business owners care about fines when they're like, well, I'm going to lose my business and go into debt because of, I'm going to fail to pay off my debts, the loans we take out for this business. So screw it. What's the point? One way or another, I'm going to lose everything and be fined and be in massive debt. Why not just continue operating? And it seems like that's what they're saying. Now, if you look at the gym in New Jersey, Atlas Gym, I think they have over like $1 million in fines. What are they going to do? What are you going to do? They already took their business license away. They don't care. They're just going to keep doing it. At a certain point, you've lost all leverage. At a certain point, when you threaten someone's livelihood and say, you won't feed your family, you will lose your home, they're going to say, then do what you must because you've taken everything else. And that's what I was talking about when I mentioned the quote from Ulysses S. Grant in the past couple of days. And I want to reiterate, it's an incredible statement from Ulysses S. Grant. He says, when someone feels that they are being oppressed by their government, it is their right to essentially invoke revolution. Just keep in mind that those that do are putting at stake their property, their life, and their guarantees as a citizen. Well, here's where it's interesting. If you've already threatened their property, threatened their life, and they have no guarantees as a citizen, you've made the choice for them. And that's why these towns are saying, we don't care. It's either you take everything from us or we lose everything. What's the difference? You forced them into this position. They're going to say, Mayor Randall Sasser signed an ordinance saying businesses could stay open in defiance of the state mandates, claiming state officials refused to give him data about the number of cases in the town, which is a population of 800. Quote, they have issued the numbers by commissioner's district, but not by zip code. And currently in Mossy Rock, in our 98564 zip code, there is no information that states there is any cases whatsoever within our zip code of COVID or any deaths related to it. He told the Daily Mail that District 3 of Lewis County, which encompasses Mossy Rock and has a population of around 23,000, has around 80 cases since March. Local critics of Sasser have raised concerns about the ordinance and the maskless rally, with one business owner saying the mayor has gone slightly off the rails. Really? Isn't that a crazy thing to say? Now, you can argue that what he's doing is wrong, but off the rails? Do you think you're just going to sit there and cross your fingers the state will provide? I mean, that's ridiculous. They'll provide to their constituents, but not some rural Oregon town that probably votes Republican. They got a Confederate flag here and they're in Oregon. That I find amazing. They say Mossy Rock's 30 businesses are largely dependent on several annual events, drawing tourists. An annual blueberry festival, which was canceled in August, usually attracts 5,000 to the town. Saturday's protest, where most attendees were seen without masks, was organized by out-of-state far-right group Patriot Prayer. Out of state? Come on. It's the region, right? Mayor Sasser said the town welcomed the protest but did not organize it. He told the Daily Mail, the governor has overstepped his powers and has no right to shut down our livelihoods. Everybody has the right to wear or not wear a mask. It comes back to our constitutional rights to be able to do what we want to do and protect the rights of small town America. Can I just pause and say, this is what I've predicted, okay? People need to understand that when I make a prediction, it's not because I just pulled an idea out of thin air. It's because something happened and I'm like, we'll get more of that. So when I say something like it feels like we're on track for a civil war, I'm not saying out of nowhere. I just think something's going to happen. I don't know the probability. I don't know what it'll look like. Maybe it's a cold civil war, whatever. But I'm basing it all off just other opinions and other people's statements and seeing states line up against each other and reject the results or dispute them. We'll see what happens on January 6th if Republicans object to the votes or if the alternate electors get any play whatsoever in the government. If the federal government, if Mike Pence, if the Congress don't care about these alternate electoral votes coming from 7 states, what happens if regular people, 74 million, just view those as legitimate? It doesn't matter what you think is formal or official. It matters where the confidence lies. My response was that if people feel that they're not being represented and they feel that the government is illegitimate, they will start forming autonomous-like zones. I said this just this morning. They'll start forming autonomous-like zones where it'll be not too dissimilar from Antifa, and they'll probably say, we don't care, Antifa, that's somewhere else. This is our town. This is what we need. They'll set up checkpoints, or they'll just tell these federal officers or agents and National Guard or whatever, get out. You are not welcome here. That's how you get hot civil conflict of some sort. But it's not the same as, a lot of people are too convinced that the past repeats itself identically, and we might get something new. At a certain point, we had the first civil war in the world, right? What was it? Maybe like some tribe was like got too big and then two people fought and you call it a civil war or whatever. There was a first time for these concepts, and maybe we will get something else. Maybe you can call it Balkanization, which also had a first time where the term was coined, the Balkan Wars and things like that. Maybe we don't have an overt civil war. We just have factionalizing or fractionalizing of this country into multiple different states that stop cooperating with each other. I don't know. But I can tell you, if the government is viewed as illegitimate because they're destroying everything, and regular people say we're not gonna play this game, then there's no confidence in government. Why would they even bother paying taxes at this point if they don't think the government is legitimate and it's only existing to hurt them? This is what I think may occur. When you see things like this town has said your orders are irrelevant. Okay. Why just these? Why not any other law? Maybe the Second Amendment. Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. How long until someone says the laws passed by this governor or government are illegitimate because they violate the Constitution and they shall not be enforced? What happens when we see that? Because we already saw it in Virginia. What happens when we start seeing it in parts of New York, where parts of New York actually have tons of Republicans and, are out there in I don't want to say wilderness, but rural areas? What happens when people just say your laws are meaningless? You can't enforce them. And this is how you get it. I'll tell you, if you came out and passed a law that said something fairly reasonable, like people weren't willing to fight against it, like, okay, we're only banning bump stocks. Most people are going to roll their eyes. Some people are going to keep their bump stocks. Some people will give them up. Some people will be angry. But most people won't do anything. What about when you attack the livelihood of people and say you can't work, you can't, make your own money? Well, now you've opened the door for them to say that's illegitimate. You've knocked over the first domino, probably one of the most important, attacking someone's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, putting them in a position where they have to choose between suffering under you or, fighting with you about it. Well, then people are probably going to choose to fight to survive. Many people might just roll over, but people will fight to survive. If they start challenging you on the big issue, their right to life, then they're going to start challenging on everything else. You've opened the door for them to start questioning, why should I adhere to any of these rules? That's what we're basically seeing here now. They say, Patriot Prayer, a pro-Trump organization which is affiliated with the Proud Boys, set up the event following the town's defiance vote last month. We can see all these photos, people just eating in restaurants like normal. Nacho's Mexican restaurant, I love that, up in, is in Oregon, I'm pretty sure. Washington. And Patriot Prayer, I believe, is from Oregon. Organizer Joey Gibson said the group is anti-government. The group is anti-government oppression, and that the enemy is the government, the people at the top who are literally trying to put their boots on our necks. Some Patriot Prayer demonstrators have become violent, including a 2017 rally. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Do you think that if the Proud Boys or Patriot Prayer start declaring, these areas to be in defiance or exempt from these lockdowns, start fighting with cops, do you think Antifa is going to come to the defense of the police? I don't. I think if they tried sending in state police to shut this down and Proud Boys started saying no and resisting like an actual autonomous zone the way they've done, they're going to be like, good, do it more. And that's when the weird things arise. But this could eventually lead to hot conflict between the far left and the right. Many normal people, like I said, will do nothing. But when the government loses legitimacy and then territory starts being claimed by individuals of particular ideology, what happens when those two meet? I don't know, but there's three factions right now. There's the government, there's the left, and there's the right. And it seems like both the right and the left are rather upset with government right now. Antifa isn't going to be singing the praises of Joe Biden. They're using him. They've said in many posts online, it's easier to overthrow a feeble old man than a fascist. They want Joe Biden in office so that when they stage their autonomous zone, they have no resistance. Trump was the avatar of his base. And so his base was saying, shut these people down. Now that Trump is expected to leave, why would any Trump supporter defend the police in Portland? They're not gonna. And when Joe Biden says we got to shut this down, Trump supporters are going to be like, don't care. Don't live there. That's on you, Biden. I didn't vote for you and you don't represent me. This is the breakdown, the factionalizing of this state, of this country. Now, what do you think happens when we get stories like this from October? Masks and social distancing likely until 2022. Bill Gates recently saying COVID could still be a risk in 2022, and they could still have an impact. It'll be closer to normal until the end of next summer. So like a year, basically. A year of all this, there'll be nothing left. In New York right now, restaurant workers and owners are holding massive rallies and protesting. It don't matter. So long as you have oath breakers, people who are willing to violate their oath of the Constitution, it's done. Something Michael Malice brought up in the IRL podcast. He said every cop is a criminal because every cop every day willingly enforces unconstitutional law. I wouldn't go as far, as Michael on that one, because to say every cop it's just absolutely not true. First of all, lots of cops have quit and refused to enforce certain laws. And there are many areas where you have police officers, smaller towns, who won't enforce unconstitutional law. In these big cities, however, oh yeah, the NYPD should be called the Oathbreaker Department. These cops, it's the money, it's the job, it's the political establishment. They're the Praetorian Guard for Bill de Blasio's unconstitutional edict when he steals taxpayer money to paint slogans on the ground. But so what? Why? You know what? I'll ask the conservatives. Why at this point? Why would you defend any of these cops in these blue cities? It's something I've asked earlier in the year too. The left complains about all this stuff, Black Lives Matter, and they complain about racism. Bro, those are in your cities where you vote for Democrats who empower these cops. If you got a problem, maybe you need a different kind of government or something. And I think they probably agree. I don't think defunding the police is the answer in big cities, but you know what? I don't live there anymore. I moved out specifically because of these problems. And I'd rather be responsible for myself at this point. So I'll tell you what. If the left wants to defund the police, you're not going to see any resistance from me at this point. I don't live there. And you know what? Maybe it's about time Republicans maybe proposed universal gun laws. If Barack Obama wants to have the individual mandate where you have to buy health insurance, perhaps Republicans, again, Michael Malice brought this up, perhaps Republicans should propose that everyone should legally have to buy a gun. See, that doesn't happen, though. The right never advocates for this. Like I said, they tend to just roll over. You look at Mitch McConnell, he's like, Donald Trump is not the president. They're not going to fight for Trump. They're not going to fight for what they believe in. They're going to fight for the establishment. They're going to roll over on their backs, exposing their soft underbelly to the Democrats and say, please just do whatever you want. And they will. I'll tell you one thing. You can complain about the left for their authoritarian behavior. You can complain about their bad ideas and the armed militias taking over parts of their cities. And I'll tell you this. At least they've got balls. They may be whiny. They may be complainy. But I tell you this. A whiny 25-year-old scrawny, gaunt, upper middle class white guy wearing a black mask who's having a temper tantrum has more gall and balls than many of these conservatives who are like, oh, shucks, guess I'm just going to go home and do nothing. Like people like Mitch McConnell. I can certainly disagree with Antifa. I can certainly claim that they're kind of weak and pathetic, but at least they're willing to go out and put on masks in defiance of law and fight for what they believe in, even if they are lunatics. Now, I'm in favor of nonviolence and peace and just making things work and function and carrying on, allowing people to live peacefully. I'm in favor of making sure everyone has access to civil rights and equality of opportunity. But we're at a certain point now where people are starting to lose it, starting to fight. And the Proud Boy types and the Trump supporters, they're not these conservatives. So you can say the same thing about when I talk about the left and their temper tantrums and whatever, but at least they have balls. Well, most traditional liberals won't do anything either. And that's why the far left doesn't like liberals. So you've got two factions now who are starting to fight for what they believe in and the establishment. So I'll put it that way. There's the three factions. You got the hard left, the hard right, and you've got the establishment. It's not just going to be one or the other. But I'll tell you, some people might think the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so if you've got people on the left and the right saying, why not divorce? And then you've got the establishment people saying, no, keep the country going. At what point do Proud Boys hold a negotiating meeting with negotiations with Rose City Antifa or whatever? And they say, I'll tell you what, you guys, by all means, do your autonomous zone here. We'll do our autonomous zone here and we'll provide support for each other because we're up against the establishment. How long until something like that happens? Honestly, I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying it feels that way when you see a city of 800 people be like, nah, to the government. declaring themselves exempt or defiant to these lockdowns. It's an autonomous zone. What's the difference? Of course, they're adhering to standard rule of law in the Constitution, but it's autonomous from these authoritarian edicts. I'll leave it there. Of course, I always say we'll see how it plays out, but I got more segments coming up later. Interesting stuff. Donald Trump retweeting a statement about arresting the governor of Georgia. So, we'll see what happens in the news. That'll be at 4 p.m. And you can find it by going to your address bar in your browser and typing in youtube.com/Timcast and hitting enter. Boom, new channel. Or you can search YouTube for Tim Pool. That's the other channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.